What if one ingredient could do it all, naturally? At shopargon.com, our 100% pure organic argan oil is more than skincare. It's massive wrinkle defense and also nourishes dry, damaged hair. It's relief for eczema and psoriasis. It soothes diaper rash, fades scars, and even calms acne-prone skin. Cold-pressed in Morocco and bottled with care, it's packed with vitamin E and healing antioxidants your skin craves. One drop, just one, and your skin feels nourished, soft, and visibly renewed. The all-in-one organic beauty solution. No wonder they call it liquid gold. Visit shopargon.com to explore our collection and feel the difference.
We've also seen Jared Kushner's father-in-law getting voted to be ambassador of France with Democrats going along for it. Like, what, how does that make any sense? How is that an opposition party?
Hey, Nayyera, welcome back to Trailblaze. It's so good to be on with you again.
It is good to see you. What are you tracking this week?
You know, I just read the story that we've been passing around back and forth, and I think it's amazing. Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, has decided to give rebate checks, Hochul refund rebate checks to New Yorkers based on the fact there's been this windfall in taxes that have come because of inflation. So it's like an inflationary rebate. And so for a bunch of New Yorkers who are having trouble figuring out how to, you know, pay their bills and keep the rent and do all the things that people need to do, here's a Democrat who's like, I'm going to send you money. And I'm sure, hopefully they're going to put her name on it. It'll be like some kind of, you know, Hochul fund or something. I love it.
It works, right? This whole idea that I am paying taxes, and if I don't feel like I got everything I should be getting for paying taxes and working as hard as we do, it'd be great to get some of my money back. And the logic of this one is that sales tax they got more sales tax because things cost more. And her idea was that, well, this is not money that belonged to me. This is money that was paid by people who shouldn't be paying higher prices to begin with. And it's logically makes sense, policy-wise makes sense. New York State just passed their budget, and people are making fun of her for it. I mean, this is a tried and true thing that works, especially for people who are up for re-election, which she is, and it's going to be a tough election.
Forget, right? She's
up for re-election.
26.
Yeah, it's very helpful to give people some of their money back. George Bush did it. People remember his checks. People remember the stimulus checks that they got.
The stimmies. A stimmy.
It's a little different, though, than telling somebody, I will put you in a lottery for $1 million if you show up to vote. Like that's not quite legal. That's what Elon Musk tried to do in Wisconsin.
Apparently, it is more legal than we thought it was, Nayyera. Because who's gotten in trouble for it?
Exactly. Right. Because the person that he was trying to unseat didn't. Elon Musk, for $1 million, was not able to buy the seat. But yeah, he didn't. What commission is going to sit there and file a lawsuit or a grievance against him at this point when he's the number 2 person running the U.S. government? So this is what Democrats need to fight back against, though, right? Is this corruption that is going unchecked in our system right now, where regular person still has to follow the rules. But if you are Elon Musk and you have a business, you show up with the president of the United States and you get other countries to give you contracts. Countries in Africa, countries in the Middle East. It's like that's how things work. Like, that's how great business is going for Elon Musk right now. And the rest of us, like, is this how are tariffs going to impact my pocketbook? What's going on?
Yeah, and it's so different than how it used to work. Look, we've always had some kind of a mercantile policy, mercantilism. Sometimes the Secretary of Commerce would go off on a trade mission with a bunch of CEOs or go to some trade conference, trade and development conference, and we'd figure out how we're going to use U.S. development money and then get corporations to come in and help pay for the redevelopment of some war-torn area, off the back of the infrastructure the American government paid in. So all that makes sense, right? Like, that's government. It's like, this kind of public-private partnership deal. This is very different. This is the biggest supporter of the president of the United States going around the world getting contracts. This is the children of the president of the United States going around the world and getting business and getting that business kind of greased all the way through. And then it's also the president of the United States and his compatriots soliciting, we find out now, soliciting an airplane from the government of Qatar.
And
it wasn't just like the government came up with it. It was like, oh, you know what? We got this plane. Maybe we should offer it to Trump. That's
apparently,
not really what happened, right?
Apparently, it's also a plan that they'd been trying to sell for many, many years. And so when Trump wanted the fancy Qatar Airways, I guess, configuration for his first class seating or whatever he wants, they found a plan
Yeah.
that they had not been able to sell to anybody else. So this is what's great about many of these countries that have been running as autocracies and dictatorships. They know how to out corrupt those of us who've been
Yes.
living in a democracy, right? Like, no, this is how we do things all the time. We know this is part of corruption, is that you think you're getting something, you're not really getting that thing, because the transparency
I
isn't
thought
there. The accountability isn't there. So that's part of corruption, is that the quality of what you get in that system also decreases. And Trump is,
that's right.
maybe he won't realize that, because I don't think he cares about that. But that's the challenge of how we're all now subject to that type of corruption in our daily lives, where, if, as long as you're friends with the person, as long as you're have some connection, that's how you get the job, that's how you get the approval for your product to go to market. The irony, though, with the Elon Musk stuff is that they're not even pretending that it's good for these countries. I mean, Starlink, none of these countries necessarily need satellite capabilities right now. Like, that's not what they're asking the US government for. What the US government has been saying is, if you give approval for that and you allow Elon Musk's Starlink to go into space and, monitor what's going on above you, then we will give you these other things that you've been asking for. Right? It's not even let's have the development. And I think this is part of what also how this comes into getting Trump to actually pay attention to the crisis in Gaza, is he looks at it as a real estate deal. Because if it was a humanitarian issue, an issue of human rights and equal justice, it's just not on his radar. And that's the world we're in. My question, though, Jamal, is what do we want Democrats to be doing about this? Because we've seen a couple of good examples. We've seen the speaking out with Senator Booker on the floor. I mean, using the rules of Congress to push back, right? The situation they're in. But we've seen Kathy Hochul come up with some innovative policies. We've also seen Jared Kushner's father-in-law getting voted to be ambassador of France, with Democrats going along for it. Like, how does that make any sense? How is that an opposition party?
Yeah. I think some people are always looking out for their own best interest, and sometimes that best interest is against the common good. And so the Democrats ought to at least be against the nepotism, right? Like, so, okay, maybe you make the decision that Scott Bessent is the best we're going to get as Treasury Secretary, right? He's a guy who at least understands numbers and math. So maybe we should vote for the person, we'll vote for the person who understands math. But just the father-in-law, the relative of the president who operates the government like it's its own little, kingdom, I don't know that we should be doing that. You bring up so many
You mean
really,
the guy who was
really
in
good points.
jail for fraud for so many years? Yeah, let's send him to France.
Yeah, and so we have, like you said, these people all around the world understand how corruption works, and so now we saw Elon Musk come into government, and he got rid of a bunch of things, whether it was the FAA or some of the scientists that determine whether or not we have clean air and clean water, and so now we're discovering that we need some of these people back, right? Like, I live here in New Jersey, where Newark Airport is getting killed because one bad, computer systems, and then also not having enough like air traffic controllers, and so the uncertainty of the way this governing style is working is really kind of putting all of us in jeopardy. And we're still seeing at National Airport, we're still seeing problems between the Pentagon flight patterns for helicopters and the civilian aircraft that are landing. And we've already had an airplane and people died. An airplane going into the Potomac River.
Well,
I'm
Jamal, there's
with
a
you.
direct
You've been raising this for a
connection.
long time. This idea of the lessening of the services that comes over time when you have this kind of autocracy
The
is really
things that
happening.
we took for granted, that yes, things are working. People worked really hard. Federal employees worked really hard to make sure that we felt our airports were working, that our food is safe, our medicine is safe. And that's what they're limiting. The top 5 people in charge of air traffic control, like the top 5 people in management who've been there forever, they're gone now. So that's how many layers of experience we are down. And so no wonder we're starting to see the challenges. Because yes, at least they understood how to work with a janky old computer system. By the time you get a new computer system in, what's going to happen between that now and then? I think anybody who works in an organization understands the value of the person or the people who have the institutional memory, who know what have been tried, what's tried, what works. Like, yes, there's technically by the book, but there's also how things work in real life in every job. And those are the people that now are being dismissed. And
Yeah.
dairy,
I mean,
they
I'm sure you've
have
seen this.
fired the folks who make sure our milk is safe. Like milk now milk is the next thing to be worried about.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sure you've seen this, whether it's like the plumber who comes to your house or anything that sort of has to get done. The person who's been doing it for a long time, they know all these tricks, right? The tricks that you can't really learn in a textbook about how to make things work.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, can somebody just bring me a piece of like a cellophane bag? And I figure out how to do this. Give me like a cardboard cellophane bag and a nail file. Now I build you a new pipe or something. That always happens. And so that happens even when you go up the ladder and you're in these agencies, that there are people who actually really understand how things work and they can figure out how to make it happen for you. And so the more you fire these folks and the more uncertainty there is, it's bad. And so I will say this for also the people who are in the business world who are taking a look at this. Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan Chase, who I probably should say my wife works at JP Morgan Chase, so I'm being careful. But he said the other day that there was a real question about us going into recession. And if we are really still concerned about recession, that everybody's like underpricing the uncertainty, that is the point that he was making, that we're all kind of getting used to the idea of these tariffs. But we really got to be careful because, the idea of putting these huge tariffs on the American population because they're going to be paying for it when goods come from other countries is going to reduce consumption. And so what we're going to have are people will buy fewer things. And if we say, oh, Walmart, as the president said to Walmart, you've got to absorb the cost of this. So if Walmart is going to absorb the cost of a 10% or a 30% tariff against some country, do you think they just make money out of the air? No, they're going to either pass that along to consumers or they're going to buy fewer things. And so when we get to the grocery store or the shop and there's less stuff on the shelves, that's going to be Trump. That's the Trump tax coming back to bite us.
On the same time, let's not forget that they are in the middle of the night trying to vote on some kind of budget bill. Unclear how they're going to navigate the fact that they want to cut taxes on the wealthy, like keep tax cuts there, but then also eliminate safety and security for the poorest people in the country, Medicaid. So they're getting rid of safety nets. As we are anticipating a potential recession, as we're anticipating higher prices, just get rid of the safety nets that exist. What is that going to do to communities around us when people who are like the working poor, people who are just on the edge, suddenly lose their ability to access healthcare, their ability to get nutrition payments? They want to get rid of SNAP payments. So food, the ability to get food over the age of 7. Because suddenly, I guess miraculously in first grade, your family's suddenly okay. Like your kid doesn't need to worry about being fed anymore. And so that's the other thing. I mean, the challenge I think is they're still operating from a model in which they think of poor people as people who are a drain on society. It's their fault they're poor. And you look at the data and it's people who are working 2 jobs and still can't afford rent. Right. That's what's crazy about our economic system right now. Like, this is where we talk about the working poor, like people who are doing what they were told they're supposed to do. People in New York City.
Let me give you a real life story. My family, my stepfather was an entrepreneur. He had a laundromat and, in some apartment building. And when my little sister was born, we weren't making enough money from his businesses. He's an entrepreneur, right? He's following the American dream. We weren't making enough money from his businesses. We were on women, infant and children program, right? We were getting WIC payments. And so WIC was paying for the food for me and my younger brother and my sister after she was born that my mom was doing. Now, here we are, a family of entrepreneurs, right? Who can't make ends meet. What's more American than that? But you still need to be able to feed your kids. And so we just don't talk about the fact that so many people in America, whether they're working at a retail store or like an hourly wage or even like more of a wage, but people need some kind of gaps to get filled sometimes. And the government is supposed to be there while you're pursuing your dreams. That's why we
pay our taxes
to help you.
Again, right? The working poor pay taxes. Right? These are services that the government should be providing for community support for all of us to be elevated and have a basic standard of living. And that is fundamentally not what the Trump administration believes in. They don't believe in people having a basic standard of living. Like, all right, you figure it out. If you have money, you figured out how to make more money with other people's money and work the financial system. If you are a laborer, if you are a small business owner, if you are working in retail, like, good luck, figure it out. Right. They're not worried. I mean, and some of it is just how disconnected they personally are. You heard RFK Jr., who had been in rehab, talking about, oh, people can just pay for stints in rehab. And like, do you realize, as a member of Congress told him in a hearing, you realize that was $250,000 that you spent in rehab? $250,000. Where's regular person supposed to come up with that kind of money? But you want to talk about a drug crisis in this country and a fentanyl crisis. Our leaders are disconnected from the reality of the American experience.
Okay, so speaking of leaders and connecting to the reality, I have to ask you, because I'm sure you've seen this. There have been some videos up in the last couple of weeks, and I'm just curious your take. What's your take? What's your take? What's your take? The leader of the Democrats is doing videos in sweatshirts and baseball caps. What do you think about that? Is that okay? I mean, does it? No, it could be fine either way.
Okay.
But is it?
My issue isn't.
Is it speaking to something that's in the American public? Because that's not his habit, right? It's not something that he had done historically. But is that saying what do you think they're seeing that encourages that kind of informality from Hakeem Jeffries that we have not seen in the past? And what are they trying to get?
They are clearly hearing Democrats have a communication challenge. They have a generational challenge, and they're not connecting with people online, which is where majority of Americans now are getting information in almost all age groups, right? They're hearing some of the stuff you and I are talking about. I don't know that is the translation of how to react. Now, are there people who have no idea who Hakeem Jeffries is, and maybe they discover him for the first time and they see him relatable in a baseball cap and a sweatshirt? Sure. But it just feels very calculated and very orchestrated. Not, hey, I'm just here. I'm Hakeem Jeffries. Let me talk to you from my kitchen today. Right? That's the challenge. Like, and it's not organic. Maybe they should think about talking to some of the young people in their coalition who are native at working in digital media. AOC, Maxwell Frost, right? A bunch of folks who have figured out how to just connect on a human level. And that's the challenge, is it just shows the older generation of leaders are really, they look at their leadership as a thing they do in a very specific performance. And outside of their performance, they don't know how to talk to people about it.
Yeah, because it does seem to me that you can be informal, but it's got to just be organic. I mean, the one thing people can sniff, they can sniff something that just doesn't seem like it fits, right? And I just think, be informal, and, and be organic, and don't try too hard, and it'll come off. It'll be fine. And if you're that guy, look, this is the thing I learned. Bernie Sanders is like 357 years old. Right. But he is the darling of young people, of young voters. Right. So it's truly not actually what you look like. Right. That is driving.
He had the mittens. He had the mittens at one time. But otherwise, like, Bernie wears what Bernie wears. It's about what he's saying and how he connects.
Right. Yeah.
Like it is very obviously authentic. And I feel, listen, there's certainly people who know how to fake their way into popularity, and whether it's through makeup or plastic surgery, right? That's a whole Hollywood piece of the equation. That's not the problem that we're having with our elected officials right now. Our elected officials are,
well, in fact, what people want more authenticity, right? Not less. I think that's actually the thing. It's one of the things with AOC that's real, is she was a waitress. When she's talking about what struggling people, working people are going through, that she has some real history to it, and she's like bringing you the reality of it. Same thing with Bernie Sanders. He's kind of a cranky old guy, but you're like, that cranky old guy who won't brush his hair, he's out here in his, faded blue button-down shirt and his tan, his khakis or whatever. That guy, he's just like college professor, high school biology teacher. Like, he just reminds me of every.
It reminds me of how in every election season we suddenly see candidates on the campaign trail. And it's like, oh, look, I'm going to go to this diner in Iowa, but I'm not wearing my jacket and I'm not wearing a tie. I have my shirt sleeves rolled up. Ooh, I'm informal now, exactly. Right? It's like those kinds of codes that exist in that group of people, and the rest of us are saying, like, guys, we don't care about those codes. We care about your experience.
Just say something.
Do you understand us? Do you believe? Yeah. Do you get what we're trying to tell you? Really don't care how you look when you do it. You're not signaling informality to me. What you're signaling is, okay, you just switched yourself up to meet this environment.
Artifice.
Because you think that's what people want.
Right. Artifice, which is what people hate about politicians. They hate the fact that, like, this
pandering
is not
and artifice.
Person. that I want to talk to, right? Like this is just some fake person. And like, come on, like I don't really need that, right? Like how many people need like being a kid and, some friend of your parents or like some uncle like wants to sit you down and talk about what you want to be for the rest of your life. What do you want to be when you grow up, kid? And have you thought about plastics? Like nobody wants to have that conversation with anybody. And that's what it feels like too often. Like you're being put on display, like with some older person who doesn't really understand you, who's trying to find some way to relate.
Well, you should just, cut
Anyway.
back on drinking your Starbucks and your Frappuccino every day. Like, y'all, do you know if I stop that every day, that still would not be saving me enough money to put a down payment on a house. So let's be real. Like that's at least allow me to enjoy my caffeine sugar hit every day because I ain't buying a house anytime soon. That's the reality.
That circles us back to Kathy Hochul writing me that check for that interest rate check. The Hochul, we gotta get a good nickname. I hope she has a good nickname. Like, although Stimmy wasn't Trump's. It came from the people. The people came up with Stimmy, but she's gonna.
I hope the people of New York enjoy getting that money back.
Yeah, I hope so. And they use it for something, like pay off a credit card bill or buy your kid something, whatever. People will figure out what to do with it. So this was a fun day. I mean, we're having a good chat. Anything else happening we need to worry about before we
see this? All right, put you on the spot with this one. Yeah. What do you think of the vice chair of the DNC, David Hogue? Folks might remember he's the young guy who came out of Parkland and was an activist, a gun rights anti-gun activist, and he now is in a position of power. Yeah. And he has started raising money to primary people who, Democrats and primary folks that he is calling out of touch. They're older, and that just needs to, we need a generational turnover. Is that the way to go?
No. I think it's wrong. I think when you are a party official, the party's job is to be neutral. I don't think you should put your thumb on the scale for the incumbent or put your thumb on the scale for the challenger. Your job is to be the, balls and strikes, here are the rules, give everybody a chance to, support people who are new and give them a chance to show up places maybe they wouldn't show up. But I think to actually go out and raise money to take on incumbents feels like if it happened in reverse, right? If party leaders were going out and raising money, this happened with Hillary Clinton, right? And doing things that put their thumb on the scale for an incumbent or a big name politician against an upstart, I think we wouldn't like it. And I just think
but we didn't. There's all of that conversation about how that happened for Hillary over Bernie, right? All like that conversation about how in the congressional campaigns, if they're not neutral, right? Because they do raise money for incumbents. They're raising money for incumbents leadership. They end up making sure that incumbents get best-in-class consultants and advice. And so it's the party itself has made it very difficult for younger people who have ideas or are engaged, but who don't have the access to participate politically like that. So it sounds like David's just trying to level the playing field and undo some of that, really what is internal nepotism. Like once you make it, we'll take care of you and make sure you never have to worry again.
I'm for him leveling the playing field. I just don't think that's the job of a party leader, right? Like I think, go raise the money externally. Go be, like I said, use your party position to give people platforms to amplify their voices and invite them in to do radio addresses or whatever the things are. You make sure you're reaching out to the broad swath of the party, but to actually run against other people, the party, to fund campaigns against other Democrats feels to me like just a step a little too far.
Then it probably should mean
I'm all for people doing it, just not doing it.
We probably should also then be the leaders shouldn't be favoring incumbents, because then it's also not a fair fight. But this is the internal nepotism, right? The candidates who raise money, a lot of money, will then share it to other candidates who are their friends in Congress. And then they cut deals and they work together. And this is how people then get elected to leadership, is because you've done a really good job of raising money for all these other incumbents. And that's how you end up with a stale system. So if you're not going to, if we're ethically not going to help challengers, I get that, but then ethically should not be helping people hold on to their job. They should be able to hold on to their job for themselves.
Yeah, you shouldn't. Like, remember that rule a few years ago? The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the DCCC, said that if you were a consultant for a challenger against an incumbent, you would lose your kind of favorite position to be
I'm like,
a
what?
consultant for the party. The party wouldn't like
Mhm.
hire you anymore. That's crazy. It's also because it's
Yes.
the way we always find new consultants, because usually the new consultants can't get a job with the established candidate. They get a job with
Mhm.
some upstart, then they win that race, and now all of a sudden we've got our tap into like a whole new way of communicating with people. So it's just dumb. On that, I absolutely agree.
Right.
I think
Because
the party has to be
all,
careful, because the party is
that ends up
running these elections.
that ends up entrenching the same stuff, and it doesn't allow for the natural evolution of ideas that's supposed to come from Congress. There's a reason why it's an every 2-year term. You're not supposed to be there for 30 years, or you're supposed to adapt to what's happening in your community. Like that's what Congress is supposed to be. Before, yes, they should be able to adapt. They shouldn't need leadership to cover their bases, remove all challengers, make sure that there's no problems. Do your job. Know your community, represent it, keep it going. I know. And then we have, right? I could say that to the Trump administration too. Just do your job.
Well, we did our job today. I liked being on the podcast with you today, and I think hopefully other people will listen to it and they'll like it too.
Thanks, Jamal.